Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, TigerTag12, having you call me, I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks, where we are today revisiting the T-34-3. This is a Chinese Tier 8 premium medium tank that was actually buffed about a year ago, or about, I think, 9 or 10 months ago, because I made a video about this tank where I reviewed the newly upgraded T-34-3. They decreased the aim time, they improved the DPM on the vehicle, and they made it overall a much more competitive vehicle. This tank has now been available in the bond shop for about a couple of days, and it costs you 8,000 bonds. Don't worry, this video is not just going to be all about stats, characteristics, and stuff. We're going to jump into a gameplay as well. But let me first show you my ideal setup with this tank, because I don't have everything unlocked on the field modifications. I play this tank a bit differently at the moment, but as soon as I get all my field modifications upgraded, I think that would be the tank that I want to play. So let's take a look. This is the T-34-3, beautiful tank in my opinion. It's just like the Type 59, but it has this very nice 122mm gun, which is very competitive in the game. So what do you get for 8,000 bonds? That is quite a lot of bonds that you're investing for a tier 8 premium medium tank, but it's also a chance for you to get a premium medium tank that is actually quite competitive. There are other options out there as well. I want to make a video where I do rank the premium bond tanks in the future, and I would just want to show you guys what you can expect out of the vehicles that are in the bond shop, because it is a very nice thing to be able to get vehicles for free that actually are fully fledged premium tanks. You do not get any kind of discount version of the T-34-3. You get the real premium deal. That means that is something for a lot of free-to-play players, a very nice thing to do, very nice thing to get. It's not easy to get premium tanks in this game, but it has become a lot easier in the last couple of years. So let's move on over to the stats. This is basically what you're getting from the get-go. These are the stats that you have. What they did, they upgraded the health, they did decrease the aim time, they decreased the dispersion, they increased the DPM, they gave it better top speed. So everything on this tank is really a lot better than it used to be. So right now, what kind of equipment would I go? Immediately, the first thing I would go for the turbocharger class 1. Why? Because you want to have the fastest vehicle available. Right here, 55 kilometers per hour top speed. That is something you actually will be able to achieve on this tank. It has great tank traverse. It has great turret traverse. So these things are already right there. And it already has very good top speed on hard and medium terrain. On soft terrain, it's not as good, but still, you can see the turn rate is actually quite decent. The soft stat on this tank, like many other vehicles, is just unfortunately not so good. The 55 kilometers per hour top speed is really nice, especially at tier 8, where you might have a little bit of an advantage, or you can be almost as fast as vehicles that have almost no armor. That is something that you also have this on this tank. This tank possesses a very nice set of armor. So let's go and take a look at that real fast. You have 100mm at the front. The lower plate is also 100mm, so you'll be bouncing shots from tier 6, tier 7 vehicles a lot of times, and it's effectively all the way up to 180mm because of the angling that you have on this tank. As soon as you go up against tier 8 mediums and tier 8 heavy tanks, it's going to be a lot less effective, but with the right angling, there are still chances that you will bounce. The real star of this tank, considering armor, is definitely the turret. The turret is up to 260mm thick at the strongest part, right next to the gun mantlet. You can see that right here, it's 200. At least I think that's the average, and you can see on average right here it's about 200. With the nice angling that you have, the effective armor goes all the way up to over 300 in a lot of areas. So you're very well protected for a medium tank. That's something that you do not see a lot of times when you're playing a tier 8 medium. But that's something that the Chinese and the Russian medium tanks do have, and that's definitely one of the reasons why a lot of people like to play them, because you can be really aggressive, you can get yourself into positions where you can hide your hull and you can really make it work with your turret. Right there you have a cupola on this side and on this side, on the left and the right, and these cupolas are obviously going to be big weak spots for your vehicle. So as soon as you have to fight a T-34-3 and it's in a hull down position, go for the cupolas. They do not possess a lot of armor. Their armor is 150 millimeters thick, but there's a bit of a catch. If you fire too far to the right, if you fire too far to the left, you will not be able to pen it. So see that you can center the shot right here next, like right on the viewport right here. Maybe let's say below the viewport a little bit, because then you're definitely going to be able to penetrate it. If you hit the viewport, which sometimes is not counted as kind of armor, you just damage the module instead of the tank. So the armor on this tank, considering it being a medium tank, is very, very nice. Moving on, you have a gun that has 122 millimeter caliber. 196 millimeters of penetration. For this kind of gun on a medium tank, I'd say that is definitely okay. You can do work with this, because you'll be flanking vehicles, you'll be shooting at them from the side, from the front, from the rear. The mobility on this tank gives you so many options, and that is something that you definitely should use. The rate of fire isn't too bad, but we're going to talk about that in just a second. So let's take a look at the second shell that we have. It is a heat shell, which has 250 millimeters of penetration. The shell velocity is not very good, but also the shell velocity on the AP shell is also not the best. So keep that in mind. Longer range, you'll have to lead the shots a lot more than you have to with other medium tanks, because having only 800 meters per second shell velocity is definitely not the best. Also, your ammo capacity is only 40 shells. You'll notice in a very long match, you might run out of non-premium shells if you have like 10 or 12 premium shells. I've had some games where I was running out of shells because I just was constantly firing when I had the opportunity to do so. So the first equipment piece definitely would be the turbocharger to make the tank faster and use that specified slot to your advantage. But let's go over to the gun once more. The reload time is quite brutal for a tier 8 medium tank, but you have a 122mm gun. Don't forget that. That's 390 alpha. That is very nice damage for a medium tank, and the rate of fire is only 4.67 rounds per minute. That's 12.85 seconds reload time without any kind of skills. You can get it down. Just let's take a look first what we can see right here. The dispersion 0.4 is also not the best, so distance wise this tank does not fare very well. We have to, look at the vehicle and see that it definitely is not a sniper. It's not supposed to be, but you can actually work with it. So let's move on to the aim time. 2.4 seconds. That is definitely not the worst, but it's also not the best. Since you most of the time will be in close to medium range engagements, the 2.4 seconds aren't too bad. So you don't really need to resort to equipment to specify and to get that better to improve the aim time. The view range with 380 meters is really not the worst for a Chinese medium tank. I expected it to be 360 or 70. 380, you can work with that. Now let's move on to the second slot. So the second slot for me, what is really important when you're playing this tank is that you want to have the DPM to deal with the other vehicles. So I probably go for a gun rammer class 1. Now that is my personal opinion, because the third slot is going to be the decoded optics and a gun rammer, because if we go and get this vehicle all the way to rank 6 in the field modifications, what you want to do is you want to first go for module durability increase, because if you go for this, the damage that they do to your vehicle and the penalties that you have to face when they start shooting your gun and destroying things on your tank is not as bad, because this tank has very good tank traverse speed. It has very good turret traverse speed. If you lose about like 10% or 5%, it's not too bad. So get that, because your dispersion of a damaged gun is going to go down. The damage to ammo wreck penalty and engine penalty is going to go down 50%. That is a big decrease of the penalty. Then the next thing, you want to decrease the the dispersion, so to get it smaller, because also by that the aim time is going to go down as well because the dispersion is less. Then you want to get the let me see real fast. You want to get the turbocharger tuning to allow you to oh no, you know what, the question right now is this tank, its stationary camo is not the worst, but it's also not the best. We can buff this a little bit and we can get it up further. This tank already has pretty good mobility with the right equipment, so you might not need the 2 kilometers per hour reverse speed. Having 25 kilometers per hour reverse speed is quite nice, but you can see the penalty that you get on the stationary camo and the moving camo is quite big. That's 6% that you can get on the moving camo, and the stationary camo, like the 7 or 6% right there, I would probably go for that, and I would just have the 21 kilometers per hour reverse speed, because you will not be reversing in this tank all the time. When you have to move somewhere, you're probably just going to be driving front towards them. So the next thing, I would go for the scouting slot to get yourself up to 423 meters base view range. And all of these stats are just without any crew training. So if we go into the crew training now, we have camouflage paint on the tank. We get it to 20% in total. We go with concealment, because that is a skill that I usually have trained on my medium tanks as well. We have brothers in arms, so the dispersion, the aim time, the DPM, everything goes up. Then obviously we have recon to increase the view range as well. Then obviously what I want to have as well is the situational awareness to increase the view range even more. So the tank at base right now is 457 meters base view range. That is really, really nice. And then we can see what we need. Obviously, because you'll be firing a lot of premium shells when you have to engage tanks that are very well armored, you want to have intuition. You want to have intuition somewhere in here. That's somehow it's not here though. So you want to have intuition, and what you also want to have is off-road driving to increase the soft terrain stats, but it's not going to help that much, but still every little bit is going to help you out. If you also have clutch braking, that's also quite nice. But I think what's most important is brothers in arms. You want to have a camouflage on the vehicle, you want to have concealment, you want to have recon and situational awareness, because then you're going to be able to spot for yourself. You don't have to rely on enemy or on other vehicles on your team to help you out. And then you can go for other skills as well. So this tank now already is a very good all-round package. Look at this, stationary camo, moving camo, everything is looking very good. You can really use this and you can make this tank a very powerful fighting force. Obviously, if you want to increase or decrease the dispersion and you want to improve the aim time, what you can also do is you can go for vents instead of the gun rammer, because you'll lose about 100 DPM per minute, or you're going to lose 100 DPM, but at the same time your dispersion is going to be better, your aim time is going to be better, and you just have to wait for like a half second longer to reload right there, like a half second, and I think that is maybe worth it. You're still going to have a pretty long reload time in comparison to other vehicles, but your view range is going to be better, your moving camo is going to be better, your soft stats, all of those things are going to be better, the tank traverse, everything is just going to feel a lot more a lot better. So this tank can be really powerful if you have the right tools and the right skills. So that's how I would probably equip my tank at the moment. Currently, I can show you guys in my garage how the tank is set up. And we're going to jump over right now. I'm going to show you what my tank is set up at the moment and how I plan on doing it. This is my setup for the future, and right now how it's looking and what I'm able to do with it in game when I have to fight vehicles, and just to see how well it does. So let's move on over to the garage and we're gonna see what I've been able to do with that thing. Okay, so this is how I have set up my T-34-3, because this is how I used to play this tank before Equipment 2.0 was introduced. You can see I own the gun rammer, I have the equipment, the enhanced gun lane drive class 1, and I have the vertical stabilizer class 1, because this tank used to have really bad dispersion when you were on the move, when you were trying to shoot at something that was, to the right or to the left. It took forever to fully aim in the reticle, and that this little tool really did help out, the vertical stabilizer class 1, because it allowed you to be more flexible when you had to shoot at things that were on your side, because a lot of times you would be flanking vehicles. Now obviously, as I mentioned, you saw my perfect setup. But still, this setup right here, this tank already is a good vehicle. Without the equipment, without all of the crew skills, this tank is quite a good tank. You can make it work very nicely if you just play it like this. And with the right equipment and with the right skills, it just becomes a very big powerhouse. So I'd say, without further ado, let's jump into the gameplay. Let's take a look at it, see where it does have its limitations, what it can do, and how it can be used most effectively in the game. So let's jump in and see for ourselves how good it is, or how bad it could be. Also, by the way, did you see that there's a track missing? A part of the track is missing right there, so it looks kind of weird. But I think it kind of looks cool at the same time, because there's a puzzle missing, and it's weird because I never noticed it up until now. So either way, let's jump over and see what this tank can do in combat. Okay, so the gameplay that I've prepared for you guys is on Pilsen, and it's not going to be a complete gameplay because I do die eventually in this gameplay, but I think it does show off quite nicely where the limitations of this tank are, and just how good it can be when you're playing it in World of Tanks. I've had another gameplay where I was fighting against tier 7 and tier 6 tanks, and I was I was one of the 2 tier 8 vehicles in the game with one other artillery piece, where I was able to do about 5,000 damage, but it wasn't as spectacular since it was only against tier 6 vehicles. So I thought that, you know what, I'm just going to show you at least a gameplay where there are tier 7 and tier 8 tanks, which shows off the limitations of the tank more, or it shows it off more realistically, because what is a tier 6 tank supposed to do? We're playing on Pilsen. This is a little map that has quite a few different areas. It has the open, wide space on the 6-0 line. You have the 0 line, which is basically all just field, and then you have the city part in the 1-4 line, where a lot of the heavy tanks usually brawl it out. Now with this tank, and with the mobility that you have with this vehicle, as well as with the gun, you can probably fight on several places. Now, the very nice thing about having a medium tank with a 122 caliber gun is that it provides you with a lot more firepower than when you have only medium tanks with about 240 alpha. The 390 alpha is really something that is a very nice added feature to support your team when you're pushing a flank. Right now I'm just kind of waiting. I'm looking for, where is the enemy team going? Are our light tanks spotting anything? And what is on the 0 line, because I do not want to rush into any space. I do have enough armor. Definitely, that is the case. Unfortunately, we do not hit the AMX 1357, and we do get lit up. But that is something that you have to kind of get used to, because the accuracy on this tank with 0.4 or 0.39 is definitely not the best. Then, at the same time, you also only have 800 meters per second shell velocity, so sniping with this tank is ill-advised and is something that I would probably not do often. But right now, in this scenario where we could have went down with the Burrasque into that position where we could have been really aggressive, that could have been a play that we could have made. But at the same time, I was more like, I want to wait. I want to see how this game kind of plays out first, and then I want to make the move because I still have enough mobility. So that's a very nice thing. So you can still make it up to your team when you notice that there's maybe a breach that you can go through, or maybe they need you somewhere else, and you can, help in those kind of locations because you have the mobility to do so. Unfortunately, once more, we do not penetrate the AT-15. That thing has a lot of armor and 196 millimeters of pen. It's just not going to stick it to the AT-15 on the side unless you really hit the flat part of the side. So I do load a heat shell just in case to be able to shoot the AT-15, but we also missed the T-20. So far, the gun is already kind of showing itself to not be very reliable in longer range engagements. But, that's something that you are used to when you're playing Chinese and Soviet medium tanks, because the caliber of the gun just usually means that you have to fight in close quarter combat or medium range, because medium range usually this tank does fare quite nicely. So what I see is that our heavy tanks over here are kind of getting overrun. They are very aggressive. So what I want to do is I want to help them out. And I see a STA-1 in the middle. He's only at 327 HP. He peeks. He doesn't see us. And we manage to knock him out because we have 390 alpha. So these are the things that make this tank so special. It's the mobility. It is the armor that you have that is this is a very well armored tank for a medium tank. And then especially it is the gun and the alpha that you possess with the 390 damage that you do with the 122 millimeter gun. So right here with a VK101P, a target that definitely you can only really penetrate if you use heat shells. And if you play this tank and, if you kind of know the ins and out about the T-34, you know that this tank doesn't have the best rate of fire, but still it does massive amounts of damage. So I want to take out the VK because it's the most dangerous tank. So I want to now put some pressure on these guys in this building. There's a KV-3 with his ass to us, so we're just going to ride in behind him, put some shots into him, and hope that we can have this breach for our team. He bounces off our turret. The Yak Panther comes in there. I'm still focused on the KV-3 because I want to finish him off. A high roll, 452 damage. That is something that does happen when you play this tank. And this Yak Panther just has, even with APCR, I think, no, with standard AP shells, he has problems getting through us. Unfortunately for him, he could have just went right through our side armor right there, but he didn't manage to do that, and he's just kind of panicking. That is something that you can do with this tank that you cannot do with other vehicles. But as soon as they start loading heat, as soon as they start noticing that, well, if you just aim a little bit for the lower plate, you're going to be able to do some damage to this tank. So I side hug the WZ, or the VZ. He still manages to hit me once more with a heat shell, but we finish him off and we take him out of the game. And in a very quick succession, we have just been able to deal 2,759 damage. And now we have a Panther that we can just side scrape and put some shells into. Unfortunately for us, this Panther just manages to penetrate our lower plate or our turret and do some damage right here. This is basically the area where you can see that this tank, where we are kind of trying to just survive in the corner, because all of the enemy team is now slowly but surely transferring over to actually engage us. And I'm just trying to get away from the Panther. I'm trying to side scrape. I'm trying to get, my lower plate hidden from him, and he manages to knock us out in the end, and we die with 3,200 damage to our name, 5 kills, a little bit of assistance damage with 87, and 1,245 damage bounced. So yeah, as soon as people start shooting gold, or as soon as they start shooting your weak spots on this tank, which is the lower plate or the upper plate with enough pen, they will start going through your tank. But players usually do panic at lower tiers, especially tier 7. I have the feeling that there are vehicles that just do not have enough pen to reliably go through the upper plate of this tank. So you can really be an aggressive tank, be in their face, and they will have a bit of trouble taking care of you. But that Panther did everything right. He probably didn't need the APCR. I think the AP on the Panther is already 200 millimeters of pen. He would have been able to go through, but with the APCR, he looked to it that every single shot is going to be able to do damage to this vehicle. This tank is really a lot of fun. This is one of those vehicles that just really is for the aggressive players. If you like playing medium tanks in an aggressive style where you go up into the face of the enemy and where you can be in a hull down position and you don't really care that you don't have enough pen because it doesn't bother you to hit the 2 key once in a while, or you just always aim for the weak spots, this can be a tank that is extremely fun to play. Because even at tier 10 and tier 9, this tank still, with its mobility, can be a very menacing threat on the sides. So you can flank with other vehicles and you can be assistance like a support tank. You can track vehicles because you have a high alpha. So usually you do manage to break the tracks when you hit the tracks on certain tanks. So you can still be a assistance tank, like a support vehicle. And on your own, in a tier 8 match with other tier 8s, you usually are quite capable in dealing damage. So this is a very nice tank now with all the buffs that it has gotten. I've already talked about the perfect setup for me at the very start. So if you're interested in that, just check that out and look at it. Maybe it could be something for you. If you want to do more damage, you can obviously forgo that and you can add even like the survivability perk or survivability equipment slot where you can get more HP, like what was it, case hardened, and your tank gets more HP. You have better repair speed and all that kind of stuff. So that is something that you can also use if you only want to be aggressive. But I like to have the flexibility with the view range as well, so that's why I would go for the first. But since you have the option of choosing 2 setups, you can obviously do the other one differently if you want to do that. So I think the T-34-3 is definitely worth the 8,000 bonds. It is a tank that heavy tanks player will probably like. It's a tank that medium tank players will like. It's a tank that light tank players might like because of the mobility. So overall, this is a great pick for most players and probably the best premium tank that they are putting out on the bond shop at the moment, or at least out of the 5 that they've just released. So I hope this clears up a couple of questions. I love this tank. I really enjoy it. Ever since they buffed it, it has been one of my favorite tier 8 premium tanks to take out because of the mobility, because of the gun, and because of the armor that gives you just enough protection to survive certain things that you wouldn't survive with other medium tanks. But as always, tell me what you think in the comment section below, and I'll read the comments, and yeah, we're gonna go to the next video. Until then, have a good one.